Back at it again.
Mm-hmm.
Sun is out. Weather still can't decide whether it wants to be cold or hot. It's been going through weather fluctuations the past couple of days. If this is what Steins Gate's all about, I'd like a receipt.
If it's all about weather? What?
If choosing the Steins Gate roll line means that we have to switch between hot days and cold days every other day, I want a receipt. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, we got.
Go ahead. Introduce us and our podcast and who we are and all that.
Us zany people. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the General Geekery podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we love to geek out about all that we love to geek out about with no remorse.
No regrets.
And with all of the enthusiasm in the world.
Do-do-do.
And welcome to the third edition of Anime 2023.
Oh man. To think we've been doing, well, something anime every year since when? 2018?
Oh, 2020 actually.
Really? No. I remember.
No, we started this podcast in 2019. We started this podcast in 2019. We had the first anime April in 2020, then 2021, 2022. We accidentally missed Anime April this year, so that's why we're doing Anime. Anime.
Yes. All right. So we're talking about the second half of Steins Gate Zero.
Episodes 13 to 23, and maybe we'll touch on the OVA a little bit. But
what does OVA stand for again?
Original video animation. An OVA is usually either like a separate animation kind of thing, or in terms of like a continuing series, it's like a standalone kind of episode.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, last we left off on Steins Gate Zero, things were happening. We found an amnesiac girl named Kagari, who Suzuha identifies as the person who came back in time with her from the future, Mayuri's adoptive daughter, and we left off with her regaining her memory of Mayuri and them being in a loving embrace, while Mayuri is confused as what to do, but it's just accepting of the whole situation.
Yeah, and I remember how I was agonizing about that song and where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I figured it out. Something that I had forgotten about and remembered when I was reading things on the internet is that our Okabe, our Okabe retains his memories when he jumps world lines, but he doesn't get the memories from the world line that he's entering. So if he's in the beta world line and he jumps to the alpha world line, he doesn't remember anything that happened in the alpha world line before he showed up.
Yeah.
Right. So the thought with that is that he learned in a world line where when our Okabe wasn't in a world line, probably the beta world line.
Whichever world line that he originated in.
Yeah, or maybe the alpha. I'm not sure. Whichever one Kaguri ended up in, because she's the one who sang the song, and he heard the song, and that's where he learned it.
Yeah, which is the beta. We're in the beta.
Which is the beta?
Yeah.
Oh. Or is it the alpha? Because
no, alpha is where Mayuri dies and
right.
Kurisu lives. So the beta world line has Kaguri.
Gotcha. Yes. Oh, the beta world line has Kaguri. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering because our Okabe in the beta world line doesn't remember the song, but maybe so maybe he
I do have a thing to add to on that, because I actually remember this from remember how in the original Steins Gate he once described the first time sensation that he had of a reading Steiner ability when he was a child.
Yes, I remember that.
So maybe
that was probably when maybe that was the first time that he shifted world lines, and he that was possibly when he forgot the song. Yeah. Who
Yeah. So that was so.
How old was he then? Was it before or after after he became the mad scientist and Mayuri became his hostage?
That is a good question. That I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll look deeper into it. Editor Donald, after you double check it, just input a little bit of a note right here if you actually found that out. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you ahead of time.
Yes, but anyway, the idea is from me is that our Okabe doesn't know the song because a different version of him learned the song from Kaguri, and he later just forgot that memory because he never experienced it.
Because of world line jumping.
It's
kind of a it's a little bit of a chaos theory edition of the bootstrap.
Yeah, for him that past didn't happen because he wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Right? But for Kaguri it still happened.
But
it still happened. And he still passed it on to he still passed on the memory of it to his mom.
Who passed it to Yuki.
And it still continued to move on, even though... I gotta stop recording here. That's the second time I've rung this bell.
That's okay.
So it continued to be passed on, even though he had moved on to a different world line via reading Steiner.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Everybody got that?
Yep, understood. Cool.
All right.
Because I had the issue where I was like, but he remembers everything from past world lines. I'm like, no, he doesn't. Not if he wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. So from the perspective of our Okabe, he never learned the song. But from the perspective of
a different
Okabe, who was still doing stuff while our Okabe wasn't in the world line with him. Which is really weird to me. I keep on forgetting that because there's different versions of people in different, in each world line. I'm like, yeah, there's different versions of Okabe as well.
Right.
Even if, yeah. What happens to his self? What happens to his brain when our Okabe goes and leaves to another I almost said time zone, another world line.
Best not to think about it. We got
the one that whose memories got overwritten. Does he just have amnesia the next 24 hours? And you're like, yeah, you were acting really really weird, and you all this stuff.
Truthfully, best not to think about it. We got a lot more time travel stuff to get through. Let's
just
because so much happened in the second half of
that
Zero.
was just something left over from last time that was really bugging me, and now I'm fine with it.
Now that we got it all out of our systems, let's discuss the second half of Zero, starting off with Kaguri's disappearance.
Yes. So she
Don't mind the dogs outside, guys.
I don't think yeah, that's just Peanut.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so Kaguri goes missing. Kaguri goes missing.
After hearing Mozart from a truck that's blaring Mozart all through the streets.
Yes.
While at the same time, Moeka, aka Shining Finger, and Okabe stumble upon a facility that Moeka suspects is where they kept Kaguri, because it says "mommy" all over the walls.
It's very. I think it's very much like where Eleven was kept in Stranger Things. She's got these childish drawings all over the place, very insane asylum But yeah, I think basically it was that was the area where Kaguri was found, kind of. And that's why they went there. And so they find this facility. They find the writing on the wall and stuff, and figure out that this was where Kaguri was being held. And then Kaguri disappears because of the Mozart. She just wanders away. And people start looking for her. Months pass with no sign of her.
We get a time skip.
Yeah, and everyone is wearing different clothes to show that time has passed.
It's coming.
Except for Okabe, he's still just wearing completely black.
He's immortal. Let him brood.
He's a brooding emo boy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, as the months pass, it's coming across the 1-year anniversary of Kurisu's death, and Suzuha explains to her dad, Daru, that she only has enough fuel to time leap a year maximum into the past, and if they pass the date of, it's either when Kurisu dies or when she appears for the first time in the time machine in this world line, then they're going to miss their window to change the future, and they can't prevent World War III.
Yeah. So they've asked Maho to help build a time leap machine, so the phone wave.
Yeah, to recreate the phone wave, and specifically sending one's consciousness up to 48 hours into the past, such as how it was in the second half of the original Steins.
Which I maintain is the coolest kind of time travel. Like, possibly the most, like, the least prone to the error of meeting yourself.
Yes.
Because you're just, it's the same body.
Yep.
Like, you're not going to, like, be walking around and like, see yourself from the past and have to avoid them because you're already there. You're just like occupying the brain. I think that's really cool. At this point, while they're building the time leap machine and everything, Suzuha is attacked by a brainwashed Kagari, who is like, she's got like a motorcycle helmet, and she's got like this like black ninja sort of femme fatale assassin kind of getup.
She looks exactly like the masked woman that infiltrated the lab in episode 7, 6, somewhere around that. 6 to 7. End of 6.
Yeah.
End of 6 into 7 that we originally thought was Kiryu Moeka, and this one turned out to be Kagari. But
for some reason, I thought it was Yuki for a while. Because she kept on, like, injuring herself, right?
Yeah, they kept leading us on with that. There's actually something about that relates to the visual novel that I'll say at the end of it, because I was doing a little bit of research into it, because I know some people had some issues with this anime adaptation, but I'll save it until the end.
Okay, cool. Okay, so they realized that Kagari was already brainwashed before she traveled to the past. So,
And so she came back to get the metal upa that future Mayuri gave her, because it's a precious memento from her mom. And that even though she's under some kind of brainwashing, the memories that she holds for her mother are still predominant in her mind.
Yeah. And, yeah, so we can kind of infer, I guess, that somebody in the future brainwashed Kagari before she went back in time. Okay.
Well, we didn't know it was like in the future that brainwashed her. We had the suspicion because of what Suzuha told us. Yeah. I mean, at least I know I had, and I know early on I kind of got a vocal hint, and I'm like, I hate my proclivity for recognizing people's voices, because I kind of got spoiled for me a little bit early because of that, watching it, who was the mastermind, and I'm like, oh, it can't be. And sure enough, as we reach the climactic event, a lot of things start happening. Okabe is studying to go to the same university that Maho is at the behest of Professor Alex Leskinen, who he also runs into in Japan again after the time skip. Maho returns to work on the time leap machine, which Okabe...
He discovers they're working on it, and he loses his shit, understandably. Because he finds some gooified bananas. He's like, what the hell is this?
Daru was doing so well keeping everything hidden, and then the bananas, and it's like, oh no.
Oh shoot! Yeah, this episode, episode 16, called Vega and Altair.
That's actually Vega and Altair is actually a reference to the name of one of the ending routes of the visual novel.
Oh, cool. And yeah. So he discovers this. He is he's very upset that they're trying to make the time leap machine again because he's just adamantly against traveling in time anymore because first of all he doesn't want to mess up this world line where Mayuri is still alive and
Kurisu sacrificed herself in order to keep it, especially after the events of episode 8. And honestly, I think this scene would not have worked as well were it not for the fact that we spent an entire episode, the entirety of episode 8 in the Alpha World line and seeing Kurisu again.
Yeah.
And he unloads so much, especially on Maho, that Daru punches him right in the face. And I'm like, thank you, Daru.
Yep. Sometimes you just need a punch in the face.
Daru hit me.
He's like, what the hell? Can't believe that happened. But yeah, it's a good punch too. Okay.
So he butts heads with both Daru and Maho, but it's not until the end of that episode when Mayuri confronts him about it. And he's trying to reassure her, but she sees that he's in just so much pain and depression that hurt. That hurts so much.
It did, yeah. She tells him that she regrets convincing him not to continue to try and save Kurisu, because the Beta World line, as we know, is the world line where after trying to save Kurisu the first time and failing, Okabe just gives up.
Not only failing, but him being the cause that she died, because he's the one that stabbed her.
He's the one that, he's the one that killed her.
Which, honestly, that's something that's a little bit of a nitpick about Zero for me, because they never outright say it, except for, at the very beginning, implicitly say that Okabe was the one that stabbed her because she kept saying she didn't want to die in, a PTSD flashback sequence, but he never outright said... I was the one that killed her, with the knife. He didn't even say that to Maho or anything.
No. Well, he almost did.
He almost did.
Yeah. But, just can't. So, yeah, so Mayuri tells him, she regrets convincing him not to try and save Kurisu, and, because she can tell that, he tells her it's fine and she's alive and that's all that matters and stuff, but she can tell he's still suffering from his decisions and things.
Even though we don't outright see this happening in Steins Gate Zero, this is where, so at the time that Steins Gate Zero was originally broadcast in Japan, prior to the release, they rebroadcast the original Steins Gate, with the exception of a change made to episode 23 of the original, series, which has been dubbed episode 23B. The second half of that episode plays out very differently, with Mayuri not confronting Okabe for giving up.
Right.
And it plays out in an event that sets up Steins Gate Zero.
Yeah.
So I had to go back and find it. I think I have found the episode. We'll probably do a reaction to that one of these days.
Oh, cool.
But
okay, so here we go. This is where Mayuri starts to hatch her plan. That she asks Suzuha to tell her everything she knows about the future, and she wants to go back in time with Suzuha to convince Okabe of the past to not give up on saving Kurisu.
So basically, back to the same day that they came back and. After the first failed attempt. Yeah, exactly. And so Suzuha and Mayuri are they're getting ready to leave in the time machine, and Suzuha gets a D-mail from Daru, her dad. Future Daru in 2025. He's skinny.
Yep.
Oh my no, he's hot.
And what I now find really funny is I can't believe that Suzuha didn't recognize him because he's literally wearing the same hat. You're like, what the hell?
Yep.
That hat is That hat is older than you are.
Yep.
You should have recognized this man immediately. Anyway.
Style never fades, my dear Suzuha.
Yep, exactly. And so she gets an email from Daru from 2025 telling her that,
AKA Barrel Teeter.
Yes, that her, like, this is going to change. This has changed the world line, and he gives her details of what he calls the Operation Arclight, which is sending Mayuri going back and trying to convince Okabe to save Kurisu, to try and save her again. And then a bunch of armed soldiers arrive to seize the time machine, and so Suzuha starts to battle with all of these soldiers, and she's trying to get Mayuri safely onto the time machine, but Mayuri gets shot in the head.
It's just the grace, though. Thank the heavens.
But, yeah, so Kaguri was there as well.
And seeing Mayuri get hurt,
yes, she attacks.
She attacks.
She goes full out Terminator. She decaps people with her hands.
It's beautiful.
Like knives the hands. Yeah.
Meanwhile, as Okabe is trying to get to Suzuha and Mayuri to get them to stop because of some events happening previously, he was trying to, because Mayuri called him earlier and basically told him about what Suzuha was doing, and he finds out that Mayuri now knows everything, even though he was trying to keep her in the dark. Mm-hmm. He confronts Maho and Daru about it, but at the same time, some things start happening. They can't access Amadeus, mm-hmm. and phone service all around the area has gone down. There's no service, and an anonymous message, which they assume is a trail of breadcrumbs left from Amadeus warning them of something, mm-hmm. Is left behind. On
like a chat room.
Yeah, on a chat room that they normally frequent. And with this information in hand, they have determined that that day was the day that it's the starting events leading to World War III.
Right, which is, yeah, the events leading to World War III were, like, people are trying to regain the time machine. So there's a bunch of different groups all converging on the rooftop of the radio building to try and seize the time machine.
Three groups that we are linked to from finding out later after future events, which is the two American groups, Derpa and Stratfor, mm-hmm. which Braun alluded to in the previous episodes, and then of course
the Russians.
The Russians, which, as established in the previous Steins Gate, Makise Kurisu's father, Dr. Nakabayashi, after stealing her theory papers, defects to Russia, mm-hmm. which starts the race to create the time machines.
Yes.
So, back to present day, and as Okabe is trying to get to them to stop them from going into the past and protect Mayuri, he is confronted by Dr. Leskinen, and mm-hmm. I called it last episode. I knew Leskinen was involved in this somehow.
I know you did.
I need you to pick up that phone.
Why?
Because I called it.
No, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to do that dumb pun. But as Leskinen explains, he was informed of these events from none other than a 10-year-old Kaguri back in 1998. Mm-hmm. When Suzuha and Kaguri stopped in 1998 to prevent the Y2K situation from happening, and after Kaguri gets separated from Suzuha, she contacts Leskinen to inform him about events correlating to the future, because when
the person who brainwashed her was Leskinen in the future,
and he has brainwashed multiple children,
so many children,
multiple children in that orphanage.
Uh-huh.
So, with all this future knowledge in mind, he has been waiting and biding his time for that day where he can steal the time machine for himself and basically set himself up as
a Time Lord.
For lack of better terms.
Yes. Okay, so Mayuri and Suzuha in the middle of this fight and this crossfire, during which Kagari is fatally wounded. They get into the time machine, and just as this time machine is fading out, a Derpa helicopter missile blows up the time machine, and Okabe obviously is just destroyed by this, and he receives a text from Mayuri explaining her reasons for wanting to go back and change past events. It's so sweet.
What hurts me is that almost instinctively he runs and returns back to the lab and is ready to time leap, even though it is not complete.
Yeah.
That hurt me so much, and in my mind I'm like, this is just second nature to him now.
Yeah, when something happens to Mayuri, he's got to go back in time and stuff.
It's catharsis at that point.
Yeah. What is...
Catharsis is not therapeutic.
You keep saying that.
No, hold on. Time out, strike it, reverse it. I learned my lesson last time. Catharsis is like when you're doing it in order to have it be therapeutic in order to fix something. No, it's second nature.
Like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember our conversation at the end of the last episode. I looked this up. Sorry, it's old habits die hard.
You keep saying this word. I don't think it means
what you think it means. I'm relearning my vocabulary, guys. Get off my back.
I was an English major for 1 semester. Okay, so with the destruction of the time machine, that's the event that triggers World War III. Now finally, Okabe decides, yeah, we need to complete the time leap machine, and we have 2 days to do it because that's as far back as we can go. And he gives them information that only he knows about how to make the time leap machine.
Everything that led up to it.
Everything that led up to it. Yep.
The hacking into CERN. The basis that Kurisu had for sending up to 48 hours into the past. Even though Maho is skeptical about doing it, she sets aside her pride because this is not a matter of pride anymore. This is just something that has to be done. Yeah. So they finish the time machine, or the time leap machine,
and within the 2 days. So Okabe uses it to leap back in time before everything happens on the roof. He tells Maho and Daru to he gives them some directions to do a couple of things. Hack into Leskinen's computer, get some Amadeus data, because Amadeus disappeared, right?
Yes.
And
Amadeus was offline during that time. She comes back afterwards, but during that time period, she is offline.
Yeah. So he then he hurries to find Mayuri and Suzuha to warn them about the impending attack. And In this iteration of the timeline, there's another armed soldier ninja person in a motorcycle helmet who attacks him, and he's fighting her and telling Mayuri and Suzuha to get in the machine and go before the missile comes. And the masked soldier this time is Professor Reyes,
who was the one who invaded the first time, supposedly.
Yeah.
This is where things get a little weird, because I was doing some research and talking with someone who had played the visual novel. Apparently, there were 4 different people under that kind of guise.
Yeah.
Kagari and Professor Reyes were one of them. Another one, I think, was an alternate version of Moeka. And the other one, I think, was Yuki. Which I'll get into that a little bit, because that also kind of correlates to Kagari as well. But let's get let's finish all this up. Before we dive into the wibbly wobbly stuff.
Yeah. So the soldiers show up earlier than anticipated, and the time machine gets destroyed again. So Okabe goes back, goes time leaping again to see if he can save them.
It's the attractor field problem all over again.
He does the same thing. He goes back and he's like, okay, we have to build the time machine, and we have to do it in 2 days so that I can go back, or the time leap machine.
But we cut to the next episode, and
it is so crazy. And okay, when we were watching this, I was waiting for this to happen so that I could see what your reaction to it, because you were like, what the.
Because how the episode...
Because the moment the clock cracked, you're like, what the hell is going on?
I'm like, did we break time?
Yeah, we did.
And as it turns out, Okabe wakes up, not in the Future Gadget Lab, but somewhere different.
Yes.
Somewhere dark. He's become very thin, very weak, and...
very old.
Very wrinkly and old.
It's the year 2036. Akihabara's devastated by World War III.
Where people are required to have some kind of identification or just executed on site. He is saved by the Suzuha of that time, who cannot believe that he is Okabe Rintaro, because she was under the assumption that he had died.
In
2025.
Yes.
As is explained by her dad, Daru, who has slimmed down in the future, and I will say it once again, oh no, he's hot!
Yep. So, so he only has his memories up to 2011. He doesn't remember anything up until 2036. So apparently, Daru tells him that the time leap machine malfunctioned in 2011, so they missed their 48-hour window.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't able to save Mayuri, so they decided to try and build a new time machine, like the one that Suzuha has been traveling in. So in 2025, Okabe was captured and tortured relentlessly by some organization. Stratfor.
It was Stratfor specifically, because Leskinen was part of it.
Yeah, and by the time Daru and the rest of the resistance were able to get him back, he was brain dead. Basically, he was a vegetable.
Yeah, he functionally lived on for the next 11 years of his life as a vegetable.
So he was in a coma for 11 years. And it was kept, the fact that he was still alive was kept a secret.
The only 4 that knew that he was alive, 5 if you count Amadeus, was Maho, Daru, Ferris, and Ruka. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, when news breaks that Okabe is alive to the surviving members of the Future Gadget Lab, Ruka and Ferris' squad are ambushed, and Ruka goes full-on beast mode with the sword. We finally get to see the sword training fully map out.
Oh man, no, and future Ruka is fantastic. I wish we had more of him.
And he dies in Okabe's arms.
Mm-hmm.
So flashing back a little bit to when we were first watching this,
oh my god, hot.
I have cried several times through the original Steins Gate, and of course the Mayuri deaths and the Kurisu deaths. But much like how Okabe got used to seeing Mayuri die every time in those world lines and anticipated it, as a viewer, you kind of expect it too, and so you're not as impacted of it. And also with Kurisu, Ruka's death not only hit Okabe, I was bawling.
I was uncomfortable.
Hannah can attest to this. I was covering my face the entire time because I was crying hard. I have a soft spot for Ruka. He's the entire story with him kind of relates to a lot of people in this generation in terms of gender identity, and especially in the original Steins Gate, especially now, and he's always just been the one that's wants to help, but they always kept him out because he was the most normal one and needed to be protected, at least in Okabe's eyes.
Irritates me so much.
I know it does, but
it gets. I have something to say about that in a little bit, but later. But so. After losing Ruka, Okabe decides he needs to use the time leap machine to return to 2011, which is 25 years in the past, and he has to return to 2011. He has to just do consecutive time leaps one after the other. Like, I think, what did they say? Like it would take like 3,000 leaps or something.
Well, because they redeveloped the time leap machine to work better than it originally had.
So it's not 20. It's not 2 days anymore. It's two weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's 2 week jumps, which Okabe applauds Maho for, because not even Kurisu could figure out how to make it to 2 weeks. She only got up to 48 hours.
You coming up here, kid?
So that kind of gives Maho a little bit of appreciation, which is nice.
Yeah. So he's leaping back,
and we reach 2025, which is the day that he was captured. And if he gets captured, then it's over.
He can't. Yeah. Then like not only. Yeah. If that happens, then the him that remembers everything, 2011 and all of that, will be tortured into a coma, and who knows when he'll wake up.
Now that I think about it, I have one thing about that. Why not just wait a week in the current time, and then you can go back to a week after it happened, and then do that and time leap back to a week before that happened?
What?
Okay. This is a little bit of a plot hole, but bear with me on this. So we time leapt back to 2 weeks after Okabe got tortured and they found him.
Right.
So let's say we wait a couple of days up to a week, and then we time leap back.
Right.
It's to the point where it's after they saved him, and after he originally was found brain dead.
Right. So
So immediately after that, you can time leap back to the point to before the day of the ambush.
Right.
Before the day of the ambush, and just not do the thing. You don't do the mission, and then you time leap back immediately afterward, the day before the ambush, and you don't have to go through that entire thing of running around in circles so they don't find you.
Well, this makes a more exciting story, man.
It does make for a more exciting story how this happened, but from a strategic standpoint, I'm thinking about this, and I'm just like, we're going the hare route. Why not go the tortoise route here?
Well,
I don't know. This is a stupid thing on my part that I just thought of afterwards. I'm not criticizing the plot for any way, shape, or form, because it plays out a little bit more excitingly. So I'm okay with it. But for some reason, I just thought of it on the spot, and I'm like, this would make a lot more tactical sense.
Yeah.
But so we finally time leap back to the day that it all happens, and Okabe's like, Daru, I need you to hit me.
So he does.
And out from the depths, he returns. Hoin Kyoma! The mad scientist persona returns.
Oh, goodness. And from my perspective, okay, because at this point, I had watched Steins Gate. I watched the sub of Steins Gate.
The original one.
Yes. And the Zero was the first Steins Gate thing that I was watching with the dub. So I literally had never I'd never experienced
J. Michael Tatum's
I'd never experienced J. Michael Tatum's Kyoma, which is pretty awesome. And Cat, Cat, step on my.
His weird Shakespearean proclivities.
Yes, exactly. And so this was like the first, I was pleasantly surprised, because I was like, it's not as insufferable as I remember.
That's the thing. He even admits that his act is cringy and embarrassing and stuff like that. But people admire him for just being so out there for it. You it's so hairballed insane that you kind of just have to sit back and be like, yeah. And it immediately elicits a response from Daru, Ferris, and Ruka that are like, oh my gosh, he's back. Our boy is back.
Yeah, and Maho is very confused, and he immediately gives her a moniker. He calls her, he says, "You, the Lilliputian," which which I love.
It's a little bit better than the sub because I checked it out in sub and he just calls her Loli Girl.
He calls her what?
Loli Girl.
Oh goodness. And
Lilliputian is funnier.
Ew, Lilliputian. What?
And Maho is officially now 009.
Yep. And then he like shows up in the CRT shop downstairs, and
Mr. Ferdinand Braun.
Yes. Yeah. What was the? He was like he said something
I
like
have time for your
I
chicanery.
have no time for petty chicanery.
Yes.
So he basically he orchestrates this whole thing where Kagari doesn't end up on the roof at all. They leave her with Braun.
They neutralize both Durpa and Stratfor, and they have Leskinen taken care of with Moika taking the place of Kagari in order to hold him up, and so they send Mayuri and Suzuha back, but a helicopter still shows up.
Yep.
It still has them explode.
It still launches a missile and it still destroys the time machine.
Which leads Okabe to the conclusion that the third party involved, which is Russia.
Yeah.
America had been neutralized with this plan, but they still need to take care of the Russians. And so how to do this? After another time leap back, Daru, Maho, Amadeus, and Okabe are trying to think of everything out.
Yeah.
And over the course of this, they are trying to figure it. The leading impetus that leads to that happening is the day that the machine is taken. Was Amadeus being hacked?
Right.
Because they flash back to the time of when Maho was being held up, and they were trying to find Kurisu's computer with all of her data on it.
Right.
And it was specifically destroyed from what Okabe describes was possibly the Russians, because they don't want America getting access to that information.
They already were able to hack Amadeus, basically.
No, because they already have access to the research because of Dr. Nakabayashi.
Oh, that's true. Right. Okay, gotcha.
So the hacking of Amadeus would further forward the plans for America and their research race, because the primary reason why Amadeus was developed in the first place was to get Kurisu's time travel theory.
Right. That was the primary reason. That's why Leskinen created it. Yeah, was for to preserve the time travel theory for himself. Basically. So they send a message back in time to who sent the message back? Was it Daru?
It was Daru.
Oh, Daru, because he had something on his computer, or something like that.
So basically, they were trying to figure out if they needed to send a D-mail to the past, but Okabe's like, that's a bit dangerous because CERN is still a thing, and he knows this. Yeah. So there's that possibility of changing it into either a different version of beta or maybe an alpha world line where CERN gets a copy of that D-mail and everything goes forward a little bit more because of them hacking into CERN, utilizing the phone way specifically. But Daru states that while he was working on the time machine for Suzuha in the past year, he developed a way to send it specifically to himself to mitigate that kind of impact.
Yeah. So he sends a message back to himself telling him to delete Amadeus. And so they send that message, Amadeus gets deleted, and only Okabe remembers that Amadeus ever existed. Now we're in a world line where Amadeus doesn't exist.
Well, at least up to a point where she wasn't hacked the first time. Because when they stormed the lab originally, when Kagari was there, I think it was around the first time that Amadeus got hacked, all the way back in episode 6-7.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which is also what originally caused that time leap into the Alpha World line in the first place, was theorized to be Russia experimenting
with time machines.
with the time travel, which caused Okabe's reading Steiner to go off.
Yeah.
At the end of episode 7.
Right. So, after deleting Amadeus, Okabe heads to the roof again, and finally,
Leskinen reveals that apparently Kagari escaped their custody. And something differently was playing out. So with Moeka's help, he's able to neutralize Leskinen, and Kagari is about to go beast... already killed Judy Reyes. Complete waste of a character, but I'll get to that in a moment. And is about to stop both Suzuha and Mayuri from going into the past.
Yeah. So Kagari and Okabe decide to... They try and hold back the enemy long enough for Mayuri and Suzuha to travel back in the time machine before the missile comes, which this time it works.
Just barely.
And they arrive, they travel back to just before Okabe returns from failing to save Kurisu the first time. So Mayuri calls herself and she encourages her to say, encourages her to basically tell Okabe not to give up. And after this, she and Suzuha kind of, in order to avoid a time paradox, they have to jump into a random time period, which ends up being 18,000 BC. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. And so the past Mayuri knocks some sense into Okabe, sends him back to try and rescue Kurisu again.
Well,
they get that message.
That leads him to reading the message from his future self from 2025, which we find out was the version of Okabe that we had been following the entire series.
From the beta world line.
Yeah, from the very beginning of Zero, the Okabe that we had been following was the Okabe that sent the message back to Steins Gate Okabe. Because it's like you needed to fail in order to be able to figure out how to deceive the world and deceive yourself. Yeah. And so we see the other side of that message.
Yeah.
Which they play off as being very overdramatic because of how Ruka and Ferris were lighting everything. And Okabe goes in his own time machine back to find Mayuri and Suzuha.
In 18,000 BC. Yeah, and the
he comes out like a Time Lord.
The post-credits thing, it was pretty epic. Yeah, they're kind of in this barren wasteland, and then we see a light, and the time machine appears, and then he walks out of the light, lab coat billowing, and
mad scientist doctor.
Mad scientist, is it something like, did you doubt me, my darlings?
Did you doubt me, my loves?
Or was it my loves? Yes.
Yeah. So, yep. And J. Michael Tatum is now the 16th Doctor. That is headcanon now.
And, that was awesome. And now I wonder, because the him that left in 2025 to go and get them, 2025, little Suzuha is already there. So what happens to the Suzuha that he went back to rescue? Do they drop her off at the moment when she left, in the future?
I try not to think about it.
2036. Do they drop her off at 2036?
I don't know. I try not to think about it.
And then Mayuri is still really young, and they bring her back, and she's still really young. Aw.
Yeah, I try not to think about that too much.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
We'd be okay, so we send Suzuha. We drop Suzuha back. The moment after her dad sent her back in time, perhaps.
Yep.
She'll come back, be hello, we were successful. Some sort of Star Trek thing.
So, and that ends Steins Gate 0. Minus an OVA where it's an intermediary between episodes 12 and episode 13 with Valentine's Day happening and Kagari wanting to make chocolates and everything.
Yeah, it's so cute.
So that was fun.
And, okay, so, your overall reactions to this series. Let's hear them.
All right, so I had to think about this for days, long and hard, and So in my research doing this, following the conclusion of watching the anime, I was initially thinking the original Steins Gate is about as dang near good an adaptation of the original visual novel as it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to hear some other people's opinions. There are other anime reviewer YouTubers that are huge fans of the original Steins Gate that I wanted to hear their opinions on.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them had played the original Zero Light novel and explained some aspects of it in the visual novel that didn't translate as well into the anime. Kagari being one of those lost in translation.
Yeah,
She
that
was
was a little bit confusing for me as well. Like, I was just along for the ride, kind of. So
she was not original. This version of Kagari in the anime is more one note than how it was in the visual novel. Because in the visual novel, you remember how I said earlier that Yuki was one of the people, Yuki Amane, Suzuha's mother in the future, was one of the people behind the mask and everything like that?
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out in Zero, the Yuki Amane that we were interacting with wasn't actually Yuki. She was out of country at the time. She would still end up meeting Daru, and it was Kagari.
It was an imposter?
It was Kagari.
Oh.
Kagari was masquerading as Yuki all along because apparently in the visual novel, I guess she fell in love with Daru?
Wow.
So, those aspects of like her hands getting cut and everything like that, and
that was okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. That's so confusing.
Yeah, and Judy Reyes, the colleague from America, we just see her once and then never see her again until the moments where she's revealed as like the person behind them. Complete waste of a character. She just shows up, and that's it. It's like, I feel nothing for this. It's not like how Moeka was in the original Steins Gate, where you had those moments of interaction with her before the world lines change, and then she shows up in there, and you're like, why? You seem like someone we could trust. You seem quirky and everything. You looked so cool. Maho, I absolutely love as a mirror image foil of Kurisu's intellect. So that was... She was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And her development over the course of the series was an absolute delight. And this sense of inferiority always to Kurisu. We all have that person that we always are rivals / friends with, that we want to live up to that kind of standard as well, but it just seems so far away. And I feel that hard. The addition of Amadeus, I know some people were not fans of having her in, but I mean, Makise Kurisu is indelibly linked to Steins Gate as a franchise. So you have to include her at some point. So I'm okay with that, especially how it plays out into the plot.
Yeah.
Overall, I still think I prefer the original Steins Gate over Zero, personally. It's just the original Steins Gate, in terms of the anime. I can't speak on behalf of the visual novels because I haven't really sat down to play them yet. I hope to one day, because I want to see how all those different endings pan out. Is just a more well tight together story with like it's a smaller cast, so you can kind of go into a little bit more exploration on that. There were some characters that were introduced in Zero that were just there and gone. Yuki is one thing because we get to spend more time with but
her other two friends.
Oh my!
They disappeared. I don't know what happened to them.
I do not even remember their names. I do not even remember their names.
Me neither.
So, yeah, I knew I had a very high bar for this show because of how the original Steins Gate was.
Yeah.
So, with all that in mind, why is it that do I fall in love with this one? I still think Zero is really good, and I'm gonna go in a little bit of a personal thing here, because sometimes when you watch an anime, it sometimes just happens at like the right time when it affects you the most.
Yeah.
And hits you on a personal level. For those of you people listening, the past couple of months for 2023, I've been going through a lot of personal issues and trials and tribulations, and I've hit a low point. Zero kind of appeared at the right time when I needed those kinds of trials and tribulations kind of put in front of me in like a fictionalized form.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotional roller coaster that I was going through during the watch throughs of these episodes kind of brought me to a state of realization where it was something that Okabe said when he was going through the time leaping journey. It's like, no matter what it takes, I can't falter anymore. This entire time I've been sitting back being content with how things were because I thought that's how it should be. Because that's how I was told, because I didn't want it all to be in vain. And why was I lying to myself? I was just being a pessimist and not being true to what I wanted it to be because I'd been through so much.
Yeah.
And I relate to the character of Okabe Rintaro so much. He's like one of my top 10 favorite anime protagonists for a reason. Because I see myself and a lot of ways that I present myself is kind of like how Okabe is, both in normal Okabe and as Hoin Kyoma. I'm like, when I'm in presentation mode, I can be very loud and very wordy, even though I don't really know my words half the time, as you have pointed out in this episode and last episode. No, you're right to do that. You're right to do that.
I feel like I shoot you down a lot when you're like that. But...
No, you're fine. You're fine. Sometimes I go far off the deep end, and you kind of have to bring me back down. It's all right.
I just have to make sure that I've taken my anxiety meds before I spend time with you, or I'll like freak out.
I'm sorry. But yeah. But at the same time, like underneath, like he's one of the most caring people in the world who always puts his friends and his loved ones before himself and will go through hell just to ensure that they can smile, even at his own personal jeopardy.
Yeah. And the thing that, well, when he had to do the consecutive time leaps, and he got to a point where, because he had sort of been in this mindset of like, this is something that I have to do alone because I don't want anyone else to suffer the way that I have or suffer because of me, etc., etc.
Yep.
That kind of like not really like kind of a savior complex sort of thing.
It's it's kind of like the duty of care.
Yes, exactly. Where it's like, and that was something that I really understood as well, because like that aspect of it where it's like, why do you like tie yourself in knots and do all these things that exhaust you and everything, like just so that other people, like, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Like, you do so much for other people that you wouldn't bother to do for yourself, you know? And things like that. So, and just like his realization that like when he's going back and stuff, and each time he goes back and encounters all the people like in the resistance or whatever, and this is like, hello, I've just time left from the future, and this is what we need to do. And they trusted him, and they were basically just like, yeah, of course, what do you need, you know? And he's like, they're all here with me, they're all in my corner, and they're going to help me out, and which I really enjoyed.
I'm gonna take
that sort of.
Gonna take that balloon for a moment, because this kind of goes back to.
Okay.
I think it was Ruka's death that really nailed it home for him, and like the talk that he had with Maho afterwards, and him coming to that realization, which is why I think it was so important. Like when he finally came back to 2011, that he said, Ruka, I need you to do this and this and this. And Ruka's like, can I do more? And he's like, Ruka, you have been doing more than you realize. And I trust you to do this more than anything. He puts specific emphasis on Ruka's importance.
Yeah.
And for someone who wants to do so much, and you give them that opportunity to do it, and you reassure them, it's like, no, you are doing so much.
Yeah, and I guess...
And you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I guess, like, the reason that bothered me, that, like, Ruka was kind of kept off to the sidelines and stuff, is like, it's to protect you and stuff. It's like, I don't want to be protected! Like,
It's kind of
like, just let me do things. It's better for me if you let me help and if you let me know what the fuck is going on, instead of just saying, like, it's better if you don't know, you don't understand. Like, so
it's basically the Mayuri thing too.
Yeah, Mayuri as well.
Ruka and Mayuri were kind of in the same shell, except Mayuri was a little bit more directly involved in the events because of Kagari. So it's rough when, like, you want to, like, put your foot down and, like, get in there and to get involved, but also at the same time, I think in Ruka's case it was a little bit different compared to Mayuri's, because I don't think Ruka realized just, like, how important he is to the people of the lab, especially to Okabe, because Okabe cares for Ruka a lot, especially considering what he went through with female Ruka in that storyline in the original Steins Gate.
Yep.
So, sorry, you first.
I was going to say, once you've groped someone in an alternate world line, you can't go back.
Like, Zero will reward people that have seen the original Steins Gate so much.
Yes.
Because of the nuances of some of the storytelling, because this is a series that is very character-driven.
Yes, which is probably one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much, because character-driven stuff is my cup of tea. Like, just really meaty, character-driven things, well-developed characters,
yes,
making choices, reacting to traumas.
Yeah.
Like,
so in a nutshell, even though personally I prefer the original Steins Gate anime over the Zero adaptation, I can still say the Zero adaptation was a worthy sequel series to the original Steins Gate. I don't think it's better by any means, but it didn't need to be. We already, with the benefit of hindsight, of the ending of the original Steins Gate, with how future Okabe Hoen Kiyoma talks to Okabe of 2011 to go back a second time to save Kurisu. It's kind of obvious that is the end game that we were trying to aim for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, did we need to know the events that led up to it? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But at the same time, it's an entire 14 to 20 years of experience that honestly kind of leaves one wondering what brought Okabe to that point that it led to all of that. Because it's 14 years of regret and everything like that, but based on, like, what we saw at the beginning of Zero, what leads a person to that point, of severe PTSD, and then is like, no, this needs to change.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm kind of glad that we got that, because we got so much more character growth from many people that honestly didn't really have that chance that much in the original Steins Gate. We got to see more from Daru and Suzuha. We got to see a little bit more from each individual character, especially this new version of Moeka was so much more hilarious compared to the original.
It was great.
We got some new character introductions in the form of Maho, which was a treat. And overall, it's just a continuation of this world that we fell in love with its first iteration. Yeah,
and we got a little bit more of a, like, I think that probably in in Zero, I think, like, Okabe learned a little bit more about like trusting the people around him as opposed to seeing them as things to be protected and kept safe. Instead, they have their own like agency and everything. Like he's been trying so hard to protect Mayuri this whole time, and then she in the end when she's saying like I have to go back in time and do this, the Operation Arclight and everything, and then he said, well, who am I to stop you? And so he lets her go.
And it's that point that like he understands, because honestly I think it comes down to like a just a character trait that is in fiction. When a person like your main protagonist has a power that other people don't have, especially when it comes to knowledge of future events, and like especially in a story of time travel, you take yourself on as one of two things: either a protector to protect those around you in order to keep established events as they are to your own detriment, or you basically become like Leskinen, where you go for your own personal benefit.
Yeah.
And trying to go through that character growth, that even though like you have this amazing ability of reading Steiner and remembering all these world lines and all these different events and knowledge and stuff like that, at the end of the day, you're still only just one person.
Yeah.
And because you had all these people that help you along the way in the form of Kurisu and every single member of the Future Gadget Lab, and that is on your side, and you come to that realization, and honestly, I'll be honest, it seems like a more complete character growth for Okabe than in the original Steins Gate.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about this, about Zero.
Yeah, that's like one benefit that it has off of Zero, which is why I think the post-credits scene of the final episode works so well when he arrives in TARDIS-like faction in the time machine to 18,000 BC, rescuing Suzuha and Mayuri as the ending song, which is called Gate of Steiner. I looked it up afterwards, and I was listening to it all night afterwards, because that song is so amazing. Because it's basically a lyrical version of the OST Believe Me, which is the sad song in almost every single Steins Gate. They made so many remixes of that song through this series.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this, and I'm just crying to myself. I'm like, this is so good. Why is this ending so epic and over the top? It seems like the right kind of finale that it needed. Like a personal triumph, a hurdle that you overcame, that you come to that realization and you come out a more full human than you were going in. And it's such a stark contrast to how Okabe started Zero, where he was just a broken shell of his former self, just in a complete black sea of depression, and now here he is, full-on Hoin Kyoma, embracing everything that has come before him and in front of him in multiple world lines, and he's in the moment. Sorry, I've been holding that in for days, and I've been trying to think rationally about like how I felt about Zero, and I can come to the conclusion I recommend Zero. I will say watch the original Steins Gate before Zero, because
confused.
because it is such a more rewarding experience. It is such a rewarding experience if you watch the original before Zero. And
hi, Cap.
Yes, Kafka.
Could I chime in?
Let's see. Indeed, Kafka. Thank you. The sky is blue.
That's really all we needed to know.
So, yeah, I went on my feelings on that a lot. So I apologize if you wanted to chime in.
What?
Did you have anything else to add?
No, I had said everything. Really, yeah.
All right. So I guess that wraps up Steins Gate.
Yeah. Whew.
An incredible series that Hannah, again, thank you for pestering me to get on Zero, and
You're
honestly,
welcome.
I'm glad that we watched it together.
Yeah.
Because I think if I had watched it alone, I don't know if I would have gotten through it.
Really?
I don't know. Sometimes
You mean like you would have just not finished it?
sometimes it's rough for me to like sit down and even if it's for a show I love, to like focus like my attention on it lately, especially with everything that I have going on and other stuff that I do. So yeah.
Well, as you know, I have no problem with binging entire shows.
I know.
Okay, now I'm going to say for the last time, hopefully, can you imagine watching the entirety of Zero in like 48 hours?
No.
I was messed up, let me tell you.
I watched the original Steins Gate in 48 hours. I'm not making that mistake twice.
Because I watched it. Okay, here's what I did. I watched Zero, and I was like, that was amazing. I don't exactly remember what happened in Steins Gate. So I watched Steins Gate, and then I watched Zero again. So that was what I did. So now I think I've actually watched Zero more times than I've watched Steins Gate. I still need to finish the dub of Steins Gate.
We'll get to the dub.
Yeah,
I promise.
It'll be fine. I'll do it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our final chat about Steins Gate Zero. We highly recommend the series. Go check it out wherever you can find it. It's on Crunchyroll in both dub and sub. Definitely go check it out.
If Crunchyroll will get its act together for you, as it eventually did for us.
Thank you for sticking through this episode. We greatly appreciate it. But we're not done with anime. No.
Oh.
Because of the schedule, we still have one more day that we can fill in for anime. And I already have figured out what we can do.
Okay.
We've kept.
Do I know this?
You know of the franchise.
Okay, but I don't. You haven't told me what you're deciding
not yet.
Okay. Because Zero was my
yes.
pick.
We're gonna be watching another movie.
Okay.
So we're keeping it sci-fi themed. We've talked about this series in the past, and I don't think you've seen the origin, so I'm gonna show it to you.
Is it? Tell me.
Next time, guys, we're gonna record a reaction to it as well. I'm gonna show Hannah the original Ghost in the Shell.
What? What? Okay. I don't know what that was.
Yes, I had been.
I just like
rolled
across the wall like I was on a demon blood detox.
So yeah, next time.
Did you understand that reference? It was very obscure. Did you remember in Supernatural?
Yes.
Like Sam ate the demon blood, and then they had to lock him in the room, and then he like started like flipping around on the walls.
Yep. Wish I had a camera for that one. That was funny.
Oh man, yeah.
But I figured, let's keep it sci-fi themed. What happened? I was in between the original Ghost in the Shell and the 2001 animated movie of Metropolis, but I figured, you know what? We're familiar with Ghost in the Shell. Let's return to a world of familiarity and see the film that many people consider one of the greatest anime films ever made, and has influenced anime in the West. So We're gonna watch the original Ghost in the Shell next time. If you guys want to see our reactions to that, or listen to our reactions to that for audio commentary, and if you want to listen to the audio commentary for when we watch the Steins Gate movie, Load Region of Deja Vu, those will be available on our Patreon at patreon.com/General Geekery, links of which will be in the description of this episode. You do need to be a member of our Patreon in order to have access to extra audio content like that. So if you want to leave a couple of bucks your way, you can get access to that audio content, watch along the movies with us, and it also helps out everything that we do here, from the shows to promotions to other content that we got coming up in the future.
Yeah.
If you guys also want to support us in other ways, you can check us out on our social media at General Geekery on Instagram and at Gen Geek Podcast on Twitter. You can find me and Hannah rolling dice on Loaded Dice Adventures on Mondays and Wednesday evenings, respectively, right around 7:30 Central Standard Time. You can also check us out at our respective social media tags in the description of this episode. Go check them out. And that is pretty much it.
I feel like we've been talking for like 3 hours.
This is the long recording. So
my introvert brain needs a.
We'll
Also,
let Hannah
this
go
is like my
first.
5th cup of coffee today, and I don't usually drink that much coffee.
Oh my goodness! All right, Hannah needs to.
I'm like in that spot where I'm like.
Hannah's getting the shakes. All right, guys. Well,
I got the shakes, man.
thank you. From a shaky Hannah Kubiak, I'm Donald Kaczynski. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening to us talk about Steins Gate. We'll wrap up Anime 2023 next time, and until next time, always remember to keep your geek on.
Always. We can say it one more time.
Clink, clink.
El Sai.
Bye, guys.
Doo-doo-doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo.